At exactly 03:47 hours, 22 nautical miles off the coast of Bandar Abbas, an Iranian Kilo-class submarine made a decision that would last exactly 11 minutes and 43 seconds. A single Type 5365K wake-homing torpedo dropped from its tube and punched into the darkness of the Strait of Hormuz. Hydrogen peroxide propellant ignited, pushing 2,200 kilograms of Soviet-era engineering to 45 knots through black water. The target sat motionless in the pre-dawn calm, a U.S. aircraft carrier, 100,000 tons of nuclear-powered American projection, billions of dollars floating in international waters with 5,000 sailors asleep in their racks. The Iranian submarine commander, hovering 180 feet below the surface, believed he had just delivered the most consequential message Iran had sent in decades. A steel and explosives aimed straight at the heart of American naval supremacy. What he didn't know, what he couldn't have known, was that his submarine had been tracked for 96 consecutive hours by acoustic sensors sensitive enough to detect a wrench dropping on a steel deck from 40 miles away. His masterstroke had been anticipated, catalogued, and countered before his torpedo ever left the tube. The Type 53-65K torpedo tells you everything you need to know about the gap between ambition and capability. Designed by Soviet engineers during the Kennedy administration, this weapon was built for a world that no longer exists. Its wake-homing guidance system tracks the disturbed water churned up behind a ship's propellers, a passive approach that emits no signals and can't be jammed electronically. A hydrogen peroxide propulsion delivers impressive speed without the telltale bubble trail of older engines. A 400-kilogram warhead packs enough punch to crack a destroyer's hull wide open. On paper, those specs sound dangerous. In reality, Soviet engineers designed this torpedo to chase merchant convoys steaming in straight lines at predictable speeds. Throwing it at an American carrier strike group equipped with acoustic sensors blanketing 50,000 square miles of ocean is something else entirely. That's not a tactical decision. That's a prayer dressed up as a weapon system. The Strait of Hormuz isn't just a waterway. It's the most watched patch of ocean on the planet. Radar stations stretching from Bahrain to Kuwait paint every surface contact in real time. Satellites pass overhead on schedules so tight that Iranian naval commanders can practically set their watches by them. Below the surface, fixed hydrophone arrays form an invisible acoustic fence that nothing heavier than a dolphin crosses unnoticed. P-8. Poseidon aircraft fly constant patrols, dropping sonobuoys and scanning with magnetic anomaly detectors that can pinpoint a steel hull hiding beneath thermal layers. The carrier strike group adds its own bubble on top of all that. Hull-mounted sonar reaching out 50 nautical miles. Towed arrays trailing behind escort destroyers like enormous underwater microphones. And the AN/SQQ-89 combat system stitching every feed together into a single tactical picture updated every 3 minutes. When the Iranian Kilo-class slipped out of Bandar Abbas 4 days earlier, AP-8 logged the departure before the submarine even cleared the harbor breakwater. Every turn, every depth change, every brief moment, the diesel engines kicked in to recharge batteries. All of it recorded and forwarded to the carrier's Combat Information Center. The commander believed slow speed and passive sonar made him a ghost. The Americans had been watching his ghost walk for 4 straight days. Desperate regimes don't run probability calculations. Iran's economy has been bleeding for years under sanctions that strangled oil revenue and sent inflation past 40%. Domestic unrest, the Mahsa Amini protests, rolling strikes, growing public fury, threatened the regime's grip from the inside. Meanwhile, a carrier strike group parked in waters Tehran considers its sovereign backyard looked like both provocation and opportunity wrapped into one. The logic of desperation writes itself. Fire the torpedo, force Washington to react, claim victory regardless of what actually happens. The submarine commander had his orders from officials sitting in air-conditioned offices in Tehran, hundreds of miles from the consequences. Iran's military doctrine calls it asymmetric warfare, using unconventional strikes to offset overwhelming conventional disadvantage. History has a different name for it. In 1988, during Operation Praying Mantis, the U.S. Navy sank or crippled half of Iran's operational fleet in a single afternoon after an Iranian mine damaged the USS Samuel B. Roberts. Tehran apparently forgot that lesson, or chose to ignore it, as 0347 hours and 8 seconds. The USS Stockdale, an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer screening 15 nautical miles ahead of the carrier, registered the launch instantly. Bow-mounted sonar caught the unmistakable acoustic signature, high-speed propeller cavitation mixed with hydrogen peroxide combustion. Torpedo in the water, bearing 042, range 8,000 yards. The Aegis combat system processed the threat faster than any human nervous system could register alarm. Speed 45 knots. Time to impact 11 minutes 43 seconds. Threat classification confirmed. Type 53, wake-homing Soviet-era design. Countermeasure solutions calculated across multiple vectors before the torpedo covered its first 500 meters. The carrier launched acoustic decoys from pneumatic tubes along her hull, flooding the water with false propeller signatures. To the torpedo's guidance brain, the ocean suddenly contained half a dozen targets. Simultaneously, Stockdale turned hard toward the incoming weapon and opened her vertical launch system. An ASROC anti-submarine rocket erupted skyward, arced through the darkness, and 8 seconds later, its payload, a Mark 54 lightweight torpedo, plunged into the water 3 miles ahead. The Mark 54 went active and acquired the incoming Type 53 in 4 seconds. 2 torpedoes now closing at a combined 95 knots, one built from 1960s Soviet blueprints. The other updated 40 times per second by a digital guidance computer designed to filter decoys and adapt in real time. At 0349 hours, just 2 minutes and 11 seconds after launch, the Mark 54's warhead detonated 10 feet from the Type 53's guidance section. Control surfaces shredded. Pressure housing cracked. The Iranian weapon lost propulsion and tumbled silently into the deep. No explosion, no impact, just dead hardware settling onto the seafloor. Stopping the torpedo was the easy part. What came next was doctrine. An American doctrine doesn't end at defense. You eliminate the launch platform so nobody ever tries again. The MH-60R Seahawk lifted off the escort's deck 90 seconds after initial detection, loaded with 2 Mark 54 torpedoes and a magnetic anomaly detector already scanning. At 0352 hours, the mad boom registered a hit. The submarine's steel hull creating a magnetic distortion the sensors could read like a billboard. 4 sonobuoys splashed into the water in a diamond pattern. The passive hydrophones heard everything. The Iranian commander had made his final mistake. He chose to run instead of going silent. The diesel engines screaming at emergency power, the submarine sprinted for deeper water, throwing noise in every direction like a drummer in a library. At 0354, the helicopter dropped its first Mark 54 from 50 feet. Target solution already uploaded via data link. The torpedo went active immediately. Below, the submarine commander threw everything he had into survival. Hard turn to port, emergency dive toward the seabed, noisemakers and decoys ejected in rapid succession. Textbook evasion from a Cold War manual. It might have worked in 1985. The Mark 54 filtered every decoy, adjusted its search pattern, and reacquired. Impact at 0356. Midship, just below the conning tower. The 44-kilogram warhead punched through the pressure hull. Water exploded inward at hundreds of gallons per second. At 300 feet of depth, physics doesn't negotiate. The submarine clawed to the surface at 0401, wallowing dead in the swells. Crew scrambled onto the deck with hands raised. 14 minutes from torpedo launch to total defeat. The carrier strike group wasn't done. Two F/A-18E Super Hornets rocketed off the flight deck, carrying AGM-88 EAAR-GM missiles, weapons designed to hunt radar emissions and remember where those emissions came from even after the radars shut down. They turned toward the Iranian coast at Mach 1.3, 9 minutes to launch point. Simultaneously, the Stockdale and her sister ship spun up 4 Tomahawk cruise missiles programmed for Bandar Abbas. The Hornets released their AARGMs at 70 nautical miles out. The missiles streaked toward the Iranian coastal radar network at Mach 2. Iranian operators scrambled to kill their transmitters, but the missile's GPS memory and millimeter wave seekers don't care about silence. Impact. Antenna arrays folded like cardboard. Control buildings erupted in secondary fires. Minutes later, 4 Tomahawks arrived at 550 miles per hour, skimming the terrain at 100 feet. The first 2 struck the submarine pens at Bandar Abbas, reinforced concrete bunkers never designed to absorb 1,000-pound precision warheads. Roofs collapsed, piers buried under rubble. The third hit the command bunker. The fourth found the torpedo storage facility, and secondary explosions scattered debris across 300 meters. The submarine that fired the torpedo no longer had a home to return to. The final accounting is brutal. Iran spent 1 torpedo worth $350,000 and revealed its submarine's acoustic signature and patrol patterns, intelligence worth more than gold. In return, they lost a submarine, a crew taken prisoner, and an entire naval base reduced to rubble. America spent roughly $12 million in ordnance. 0 casualties, 0 damage. The carrier never altered course, never changed speed. Dinner was served at normal hours. Iranian state media spent the next 48 hours claiming a successful operation that forced the American carrier to retreat. The Lincoln's navigation logs show 0 course deviations, not a single degree. Some lessons arrive through diplomacy, others through sanctions. This one arrived through Mark 54 torpedoes, Tomahawk cruise missiles, and the systematic erasure of a submarine base from the map. The Strait of Hormuz settled back into its usual tense quiet. No further Iranian submarine activity surfaced for weeks. The next submarine commander, sitting in the dark waters off Bandar Abbas, weighing whether to press the firing button, won't need to guess how the story ends. He already watched it play out. And that might be the most powerful weapon America deployed that morning. Not the missiles, not the torpedoes, but the certainty that challenging a carrier strike group with yesterday's technology against tomorrow's defenses ends exactly one way, every single time. If you enjoyed this deep dive into modern naval warfare, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss the next one. Until then, stay sharp.